In this clip right here, it's going to explain exactly why you need a hedge against the debasement for the fiat currency of your country and need Bitcoin. Check out the clip.
The $5.1 trillion didn't go to the consumers. It went to buying bad assets. It went to bailing out banks. It went to bailing out big companies. And lo and behold, the consumer didn't end up getting this. They lost their job and they lost their houses and mortgages, and they're still in trouble. But my question is, if you took that $5.1 trillion and said that consumer spending is good, you could have given every single person in this country $17,000.
And with that, what's happening, Crypto Crew? Sean's coming back at you, another cryptocurrency video. Getting straight into it. This chart here is showing you what's a Ponzi versus what's not a Ponzi. And right here, this is the dollar. You have an unlimited supply. It's not backed by anything since the early 1970s, and it's centrally controlled, meaning they can print, they can raise interest rates, lower interest rates to take liquidity in and out the system. And right now, since we got from the early 1970s, this is what happened. And this is the trillions of dollars that have been printed, and this is the national debt since the 1970s. On the right-hand side, you're looking at Bitcoin, where you have a fixed supply. It's backed by energy, and nobody can centrally control it. So after the first halving, second halving, third halving, fourth halving, and so on and so forth, you see what happens. On the left-hand side here, it's not showing you the price, it's showing you how many Bitcoin are in circulating supply per what's being mined. So as you see, after the 2024 halving, we'll be up to almost 19.7 million Bitcoin. After the 2028 halving, we'll be, it looks like, close to 20 million Bitcoin. Only 1 million left to be mined. And you see how this is going to be more and more scarce as time goes on. An update from Seth_Finn. Bitcoin chop in 2023 back into this band. Parabolic move starts after the halving. So what is he looking at? If you look at the previous cycle to this cycle, looking back in 2015 and 16, below this green band here, this is just chopping, it's basing out, seems to have double bottomed out before it chops around this channel and then blasts up after the halving, going into the halving and after the halving. And right now we're just in this channel, chopping up. And are we going to have that low in the market and then blast up into the halving? Maybe a little bit of a cool off, then continuation after the halving. At the current time, after each halving, note one thing. It comes up and touches this red line every single time. And right now, at the current time it's recording, this red line is at $160,000. So after the halving, what could we see Bitcoin blast up to? How much money is going to be into the system? It is going to be because an ETF passes along with institutional FOMO plus retail FOMO on top of one another. Our country's going to be buying. Times definitely look exciting ahead for Bitcoin. And then an update from TA trader Allen. Bitcoin staying below the final resistance at 36,000. At this stage, Bitcoin struggling within a range of 25 to 32K. So looking back at previous price charts in 2018 and 19, the bottom occurred, then the lull happened, and then we ran back up. This Bart Simpson pattern played out, and then we just chopped. And this chop was between 4.7 and 5.7K. And then the final resistance at this time was around $6,000. And this was in 2019, blast off, and then up into that 13.8K range. So right now we bottomed out around the 15.6K, 16,000, and struggled in between this range, $25,000 to $32,000 range. And this is saying that a new all-time high potentially could be had before the end of 2024, and then going into 2024 after the halving, over a $200,000 Bitcoin. Is this how this is going to play out? It definitely seems very, very bullish and up and to the right. Either way you look at it, this is still a buying opportunity. Anywhere below this range here is a buying opportunity. And taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart, what do we see? What do we anticipate? Zooming in, this is Bitcoin on the weekly chart. We see that Bitcoin has just came down and blew between the 20 and 200 moving average. So one thing to note, Bitcoin hasn't really got overbought. It came up and touched this 70 range, but right now it's putting in higher lows and higher highs, and the price action still is putting in higher highs and higher lows. So keep that in mind. The trend's still intact, but over the next few weeks, we could see a lower price action. If we do get a close below this channel, this line here, below the 24.7, then that is going to be an area to pay attention to, because you want to make sure that you ultimately hold this range right here, the 23.5 24K range, because if you break that, that'll start to break the trend, and then the trend could be starting to reverse and see lower price action. So are we going to see lower price action? How low will Bitcoin go? Or is this a Bart Simpson pattern? Are we going to just come down, chop sideways for a little bit before blasting back up? Time will definitely tell. One thing we'll look at is Ethereum price action, and it does look very similar as far as previous cycles. We broke through this downwards resistance back in 2019, came back up, and this is the pandemic dump, ultimately making a double bottom here before blasting up and to the right. One thing to note, before we were below the 200 moving average. Right now we're just sitting at the 200 moving average. So will the price action go any lower, or is this the ultimate reversal, or are we going to ultimately see, is this one big A, B, C correction? So this is something to pay attention to. Right now we're just in sort of a middle ground where it could either go either way, because this could be looking at the RSI. You see a high, you see a low. This could just be a lower high, and then we could come down and put in a lower low below the previous low, which is at the 26.4 level, before ultimately resetting the price action and stair-stepping our way up out the depths before we get that macro blow off top. So that is one scenario. Or this could be a high, a low, a lower high, but then put in a higher low, and then ultimately then put in a higher high sooner rather than later. So this is scenario number one. This is scenario number two. The Bitcoin bros think we may see a little bit lower price action before ultimately seeing a new all-time high, because one thing to note, if we see this new all-time high up here, which is around the $4,800 range for the next Bitcoin halving, that'd be something Ethereum has never did before. And looking at the Elliott waves, you see that this is wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, 4, and this could be a wave 5 that got shortened. So this could be a wave 5, or this could be wave 4 here, and wave 5 still could not be played out. So we're at that area where people can say what they want, but it's definitely valid to say that Ethereum could be putting in some type of, fourth leg bottoming range, and the next leg to the upside, the fifth leg, is going to go back up to at least the all-time high, but higher. Or this was the ultimate high for that cycle, and you're going to rinse and repeat and have a new 5 waves going into the Bitcoin halving of next year. Pay attention. Ethereum versus Bitcoin. Look at this chart. This chart does look a little bearish. Why do we say this? Because you see a macro symmetrical triangle that has been forming since back in 2017. And if we just keep hitting the ranges, we hit the top, hit the bottom, top, bottom, before getting to this apex area before we get squeezed. Now this is going to probably tend to break to the upside. When you go into this in a bullish fashion, you're going to have a higher probability to break to the upside versus to the downside. So we're not saying that this is going to happen. It's probably going to go to the upside, but one thing to note is that we could have one more leg down before getting closer to that apex area. So let's move our drawings here, and let's redraw this. We see that once again we are in this macro channel, and this channel has been just acting as resistance and support, and this apex is around July of 2025. And if we take a closer look to this price action, we do see that in the previous cycle, we put in a lower high, then a higher high, then a lower high, and a low in between that, before ultimately having that breakdown and putting a lower low in. Now look here, we put in a lower high, a higher high, then a low, then a higher high, and then look. So right where we're at right now, this area here would be equivalent to potentially this area right here, and then it fell off a cliff. So could we see Ethereum fall off a cliff? Looking at the RSI below compared to the price action, we see the double top here, and then putting a lower high in, and then another lower high, then ultimately double bottoming out before blasting to the upside. And then we see we put in a high here, We hit our hit on the 200, putting another high, another high. We just been sort of lowing out. We did come back down here, but we weren't that overbought. That was just an anomaly. But then just coming in and just been melting down, putting lower lows and lower highs. So the trend's your friend to the end. It's apparent that this trend is still to the downside. Even with this anomaly right here, we still could see Ethereum break to the downside and have some type of price action like this when it comes back down and retest this lower range from this upward support and come back down and put a lower low in, lower than this previous test of this lower cycle in the RSI. So this is something you have to pay attention to per the Ethereum Bitcoin price chart. So is it time to get in alts? Right now, it looks like we could just be waiting a little bit for Ethereum to cool off a little bit more, come back down, retest this upper bound before ultimately coming in. And just coincidentally, this is after the 2024 halving, Bitcoin's 2024 halvings right here. And then this could flip out of here, break resistance to support to have a run to the upside. And that could be a bullish indication for not just Ethereum, but the alt market. So this is something to pay attention to. And with that, if you guys like this content, go ahead and smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and show us some love. We appreciate the support. With that, that's all I have for you today, and I'm out.